past and one that needs to be talked about more often. At present, there are hardly any Pandits living in Srinagar or any other part of the valley. Some of them live in refugee camps in Jammu, while a few live in Delhi and Mumbai.
रहना मैसेज डाल वी आर
Can we put lights on?
व्हाट्सएप पे मैसेज डाल देना
So that this presentation is really painful and resonates to the today's topic, genocide of Kashmiri Hindus. This is what is called cultural genocide. For years and years and centuries together has been done with Kashmiri Pandits. Yes, as per the speakers which spoke since morning, that probably we have not been doing enough to create noise on this narrative that has been happening with Kashmiri Pandits. So it is very sad, but it is part and parcel. We have been seeing this for past, at least my generation, for past 33 years. To carry forward this program further, I request in the morning, I could not give a brief description of Dr. Ramesh Raina because of some time limits. As I already described in the morning, that he is a practicing doctor. He has graduated from Government Medical College, Kashmir, and he is currently practicing as a practicing doctor in Faridabad. He has worked with KHST, which is Kashmiri Samiti Delhi, for a long period of time, and then he came in 2009 to All India Kashmiri Samaj as General Secretary and Secretary of the Trust, and remained in this position for till 2015. In view of this commitment and contribution towards the cause, he was invited in 2012 by Shri Venkaiah Naidu, the then Vice President of India, and for the Chairman, Joint Parliamentary Committee for Relief and Rehabilitation of Kashmiri Migrants, to make a presentation about the displacement issues. So that is how he has contributed for the cause of Kashmiri community for a long period of time. I have the privilege to once again call him on dais. Dr. Sir, please, once again, a big round of applause.
Thank you so much. I am really humbled by your generous comments. Respected Professor Sopori, Manoramaji, Alkaji, Mr. Mamediji, and all the distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Kashmiri Pandits, their history, some shades of their cultural atrocities you have gone through, you have watched. If we slightly go back and try to introspect deeply as to what has happened to this community, then we need to start from pre-Islamic and post-Islamic history of Kashmiri Pandits. Not only Kashmiri Pandits, because when I say Kashmiri Pandits, I say Kashmir. Because Kashmiri Pandits are the aborigines of Kashmir. They have a 5,000-year-old history, both written and spoken. Kashmir was Kashmir when Madras was not Madras. Kashmir was Kashmir when probably Hyderabad was not Hyderabad. Kashmir was Kashmir when probably Bombay was not Bombay. So we have known Kashmir from eternal times. Therefore, it has a relevance. It has a relevance for the entire country. People normally say that Kashmir is an extension of Indian civilization, but I say it differently. I say India is an extension of Kashmir civilization. Why? There's a reason. If you look at the religious schools of thought, if you look the contribution of Kashmir and Kashmiri Pandits towards the religion as a whole, for example, Buddhism. The famous Buddhism conference of international magnitude happened in Kashmir several thousand years back, so on and so forth. There are so many things that we can talk about, but unfortunately this is not the forum where I should talk, because then it is an endless debate. When Shankaracharya came to Kashmir, and a Kashmiri Panditani defeated Shankaracharya's argument because she said that Shiv is incomplete without Shakti. Why? Because you never know, you have not, you are a bachelor, therefore you cannot talk about Shakti. And that is where the correction was made in the religious scriptures, that it is Shiv Shakti. Shiv is incomplete without Shakti. And if you look back at the history of Taranga, and that Taranga people say that Shankaracharya awarded that Kashmiri Panditani, that lady with that Taranga, and that is how the origin of Taranga has come in. And if you look at the tail part of it, it's like a snake. With the head here, head is here, and the back down is snake. It is in the form of snake. Why? Because it's largely believed that we are the progeny of Nagas and Pishachs. Because if you look back at the history of Kashmir, there has been an agreement between the king of snakes, King Harsha, and King Kashyap. Because when Jalod Baba was killed, then there was a premonition. Premonition was that the people living on the banks would eat away our culture. They went to Lord Kashyap and they told him about their problems. Then Lord Kashyap insisted on the people living on the banks, and they entered into an agreement with the king of snakes, Harsha, and that is how we retain those traditions like Khechamawa, so on and so forth. But coming to the present day problems. Present day problems are not new to us, because we have been facing persecution for the past 800 years, and from 1300 till 1800, those 5 years were of tremendous relevance to Kashmir, relevant to Kashmiri Pandits, because as I said in my earlier presentation, that Kashmiri Pandits developed a persecution personality. Now, coming straight to post-90 problems, post-90 Exodus issues, world remained quiet. They forgot that there is a community like Kashmiri Pandits who have suffered and who are suffering. Nobody took note of it. Probably the issue was kept willfully under the carpet. Why? Because there was reason. The reason was that they feared that something different might happen to Kashmir. Therefore, Kashmiri Pandits remained forgotten. It was Kashmir Files, which came to the rescue of humanity. I would not say to the rescue of Kashmiri Pandits, but to the rescue of the entire humanity, that opened the eyes of the people. Though Kashmir Files did not depict to the extent that it ought to have, it depicted just 5% even those 5% were such gory incidents, the tale of such gory incidents that nobody could imagine, and it became an international eye-opener. The story, the atrocities that we were tending to try to convince, to try to tell the community, try to tell the fellow citizens that look here what has happened to us, nobody believed. Just one Kashmir Files could change the perception. It was not a movie. It was the characterization of real events. It was the characterization of what happened to this hapless minority which nobody took note of. Does that mean that if justice is not meted out to this community, this poor community, then we have to create so many Kashmir Files like that? Does it mean that we have to resort to that kind of a thing? Let me tell you two very important things. And I say it with all the conviction. Kashmiri Pandits constitute the first line of natural defense for India and Kashmir, and that is my conviction. Kashmiri Pandit organizations, Kashmiri Pandits, they constitute the grassroots level advocacy group for India and Kashmir. These two things one needs to acknowledge. One needs to understand why I say that. As I said earlier also, there are politicians in Kashmir who have written books on Kashmir, and when it came to the description of Kashmiri Pandits, they described Kashmiri Pandits as fifth columnists. Now, if you go to the dictionary meaning of the fifth columnist, that means he is an agent of enemy. Now, if Kashmiri Pandit is an agent, then who is the enemy? I think you need better to understand that. So that means our country was treated as an enemy there, and Kashmiri Pandits were agents. Now, that is the perception Kashmiri Pandits have been changing for all these years, for all these 33 years. We have been simultaneously fighting for the country. Despite all those things, justice has eluded us. Justice is eluding us. And as far as my understanding goes, I don't think my generation will see me back in Kashmir. There are layers of things happening there. If you peel off one layer, then another layer comes out. If you peel off another, then another layer comes out. Otherwise, how can you imagine this? कश्मीर में क्या चलेगा निज़ाम मुस्तफ़ा का क्या मतलब ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाह. Unfortunately, Kashmir is the only place in India where there is a no minority concept. You have to put it this, let me put it this way. The Muslims of Kashmir who are in an abrupt majority, they're 98% majority, they are linked with the mainstream Muslim minority of India, thereby enjoying both fruits of being rulers of the place and enjoying the minority benefits. 15-point program that has been evolved for the minority development in India, that also is being grabbed up by them. Unfortunately, Kashmiri Pandits, an abject minority, they are being linked with the mainstream Hindu majority of India. We are very happy with it. We're very happy with it. But if I ask for minority rights, if I ask for, but you have developed 15 points program for the minority development, should I not be the beneficiary of that? So this is a dilemma. And this dilemma we have been trying to bring to the knowledge of the powers that be, not today, not yesterday, but all these 33 years. We have been trying to communicate to the powers that be that this is wrong. If you cannot do anything to us but kindly correct this wrong, but this wrong is yet to be corrected. During our struggle of these 33 years, we have not asked for moon. This is the only community, despite so much of sufferings, despite so much of civilizational trauma behind it, we have very silently, as respectable citizens of the country, protested. And urged the government to please correct the wrongs. And while taking this argument, AIKS started with an affiliate connect program. For the non-Kashmiri Pandits, let me first of all give you a brief about AIKS. All India Kashmiri Samaj is an apex organization of Kashmiri Pandits, having both affiliates within India and abroad. And we got affiliates within India, we got affiliates abroad, and we took a conscious decision that we would be having an affiliate connect program with each and every affiliate. And in the process, we will be trying to have a civil society meet so that to give them a peep of what is happening and what has happened. Because normally there is a deception and denial. People are being fed on wrong things. For example, this is widely being circulated that Kashmiri Pandits were, Jagmohan was instrumental in getting Kashmiri Pandits out. And this fake narrative survived all these years. Even today in some quarters in Kashmir, this is being said that you were asked by Jagmohan to go. So there are similar theories about our exodus because, as I said, the deception and denial, this is absolutely important when you keep an important element of the society away, like Kashmiri Pandits have been kept all these years, and maybe for another few years as well. So, on 21st of January this year, we came out with an Ambala Declaration, AIKS Ambala Declaration 2023, where we asked the government to create a legitimate minority space for Kashmiri Pandits in Kashmir. Now, what do we mean by the creation of a legitimate minority space for Kashmiri Pandits is that Kashmiri Pandits enjoy a factorial importance in the socio-cultural construct of Kashmir. And this factorial importance has to be acknowledged and has to be understood rightly. Why? Because this is not eating away anybody's space. This is not there to create issues for other people to stay there. We're only asking for a legitimate minority space for Kashmiri Pandits, which we had before 1990. We want a minority protection. And how can you give that minority protection? And that minority protection is possible only when you have a declared minority there, one. And number two, when you have a minority commission for Kashmiri Pandits to look after their issues. We are a politically orphaned community. When I say politically orphaned community, means that this community is unrepresented for the past so many decades now. We had one constituency which was a Kashmiri Pandit majority constituency by the name Habakadal. And Kashmiri Pandits invariably would get elected from that Habakadal constituency, giving an opportunity, giving a political representation to Kashmiri Pandits in the elected bodies of the state. But unfortunately, because of gerrymandering of that constituency, it lost its Kashmiri Pandit majority character. And I think for about 3 decades now, no Kashmiri Pandits has entered that legislature through elected route. And thanks to the present government, they nominated 2 MLCs to look after the Kashmiri Pandit issues. Now, since there is no legislative council, we don't have any representative. We have no political representative. And it was this very argument which was brought to the knowledge of Delimitation Commission when Government of India established it for the state of J&K. And Mrs. Ranjana Desai was the chairperson of the delimitation commission. We had several meetings with her. We gave her several options. The option number one was that we could create a notional constituency for Kashmiri Pandits in Kashmir. Now, what do we mean by notional constituency? We have one Sangha constituency in Sikkim, which doesn't have any boundary, which doesn't have any territory. It's a territoryless and a boundaryless constituency, having only 3,200 as its voters and as its contestants. And those 3,200 are the people who are Buddhist monks registered with various Buddhist monasteries in Sikkim, with, of course, 65 or 66 nuns. Only these 3,200 people are entitled to vote that place, and any person from amongst them can contest the election and get elected to the legislative bodies. We said that such example can be replicated in favor of Kashmiri Pandits because they have nobody to look after. It is an unrepresented community, and in a multicultural society like that, in a secular country like that, you cannot have a community unrepresented politically. Political representation is absolutely important for anybody. I don't say for Kashmiri Pandits. For anybody, you need a political representation. Thereafter, Delimitation Commission did consider our demands sympathetically, and they suggested that the government should nominate 2 persons to the legislative bodies. But there is a dilemma. There is an issue with this thing, and the issue is that any political party running the government, running the affairs of the government, they will choose their own people, so that would not be seen as a genuine political representation of Kashmiri Pandits. So what we want a genuine political representation of Kashmiri Pandits that would empower Kashmiri Pandits, that would politically empower Kashmiri Pandits, and that would act as an incentive for the return of Kashmiri Pandits. Because when we ask Kashmiri Pandits to return without any blueprint, without any plan, what is the incentive for Kashmiri Pandits to return? And remember, in the absence of Kashmiri Pandits, there is a greater Islamization of Kashmir taking place at a greater pace. I salute Government of India. I salute the present political dispensation at the center. They did some commendable job, and we are really proud of such things as Indians. For example, they removed Article 370. They incorporated Kashmir into the constitutional mainstream of India. Wonderful. They did so many things. G20, which was only next to impossible a few years back. But having said that, the minority question remains. It remains. We are seeing development. We are also happy. We're happy because we belong to that place. We are seeing growing prosperity there. But you can't have cake in somebody's hand and somebody looking after that cake, please give me my share. That's not done. You can't be unfair. Justice has to be done with this community. We are not begging for justice. It is our natural right to seek justice. You know, there are 2 things very important, which again I would like to bring to your knowledge. Injustice and threat perception. We came out of one stage. That was in 90s when the mass exodus of Kashmiri Pandits took place. Then there were whole scale murders between 1990 and 2000 in the farm of Sangrampura, Vandarhama, Chitti Singhpura, Telwani, so on and so forth. Then there was a lull between 2000 and 2020, and then ML Bindru stuck, and then came the idea of hybrid terror. And what does this hybrid terror mean? Hybrid terror means that you keep pistol in your pocket and see any Hindu tuck, that's all. And he just gets melted away in the population without getting noticed. I can tell you, but why non-Kashmiri Muslims? They are not Kashmiri Pandits alone. They are non-Kashmiri Hindus, Prime Minister package employees. So they want to wipe out any trace of Hinduism from Kashmir. There's a persistent effort to erase Kashmiri Pandits from the socio-psychological memory of Kashmir, which should never happen. And if it happens, it is a civilizational assault. And who has to prevent this civilizational assault? Who is there to prevent it? We all citizens. Because when we say secularism, you can't have a different definition of secularism in Kashmir and a different meaning of secularism in rest of the country. Imagine, had this thing happened somewhere, maybe UP, with some other community, what would have been the response of the nation? People would have come on streets. People would have done such things, unexpected things. There would have been pressure from international community, this, blah, 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 blah. But why people are silent about the atrocities inflicted on Kashmiri Pandits? That is $1 million question. I really fail to understand. Have we not contributed to the growth and development of the country? Have we not contributed to the growth and development of the state? Let me tell you, in education sector, Kashmiri Pandits have given their best to Kashmir. Health sector, we have given the best to the place. You take any index, human development index of the state, Kashmiri Pandits you will find on the front. Then why to punish them? Are we not sons of the soil? This is a debate. When I talk, I'm seen as a Kashmiri Pandit talking about its own issues. But I only think that the perception of the people change. The perception should be that if that is the state of affairs, then what is the fate of other minorities in the country? We are talking about minority management. Unfortunately, there is a poor minority management in Kashmir that you can see because the entire minority of Kashmiri Pandits is out of Kashmir. And aren't we supposed to fix the responsibility who did it? Aren't we supposed to seek answers from the people why did it happen? Aren't we supposed to know, to tell the world that why aren't we taking steps to reverse this whole process? Aren't we supposed to come out with a blueprint about the rehabilitation of Kashmiri Pandits? Aren't we supposed to give them healing touch? Why shouldn't it happen? What is the reason? And I think the reason is for all of us to know we have to scratch our heads to find out the solutions. I know I'm taking more time, but before I conclude, I would be concluding on few things. Today, the objective of having a civil society meet here is, number one, to apprise about the issues of Kashmiri Pandits, not as Kashmiri Pandits, but as fellow Indians. Number two, what we understand as an apex organization of Kashmiri Pandits is that rehabilitation of Kashmiri Pandits is absolutely mandatory if we want to reverse the tide of anti-Hindu sentiment there, if we want to ensure that the genuine secularism takes roots in the valley of Kashmir, then rehabilitation of Kashmiri Pandits is of great significance. Now, in what manner? And that's why I have said Ambala Declaration is a response, is a paper that we have prepared. It is not the AIKS which has prepared. It has been prepared after a thorough debate and after a thorough discussion with all the who's who of Kashmiri Pandit community. with all the opinion makers, with major Kashmiri Pandit organizations, and it's only after that we came out with Ambala Declaration where we say that we need a legitimate minority space for Kashmiri Pandits. Therefore, everybody needs to chip in, and I'm grateful to our media fraternity, which of late, of course, has been taking up Kashmiri Pandit issues, and there have been a lot of debates going on both at the regional level and at the national level, and this issue has been highlighted, and even in certain quarters who didn't know what had happened, they also came to know that something like this has happened. So my humble suggestion to you is that wherever you are, in whatever capacity you are, you need to think as fellow countrymen, as fellow citizens, and ensure that Kashmiri Pandits get an honorable place back in the Valley of Kashmir, but with an identity as a minority in Kashmir. Thank you so much.
Dr. Saab, thank you very much for putting the perspective in connection with the Kashmir and why Kashmir is crown of India. You have described it very well, and it was unfortunate that Kashmir file had to make people aware about the atrocities Kashmiri Pandits had gone through. So probably it has made a lot of awareness, and we are very much sure that all citizens of India will shoulder us in this case, that what has happened with Kashmiri Pandits, and still it is the community who has stood and grown. As one of the speaker was saying, that we are at the top positions of many corporates and government organizations and top corporates.
No problem. Really. Continue.
So we have grown. That is how our educational system and culture was so strong that we could grow despite moving out of Kashmir. I remember we left Kashmir with just 2 clothes. We had nothing to carry forward because we thought that we'll come back. That hope is still alive, and till we die, that hope is still alive. Till eternity, till we die, that we can assure you. Emotional, sometimes people get, it is part of emotions. Now, carrying forward, we have a distinguished, eminent personality with us, Mr. Girdhar Mamdi Garu. As a qualification, he is a chartered accountant, and he has been CFO at Punj Lloyd, Saudi Arabia. He has been CFO at Develop Offices, IT Park, Delhi. He has been the first head of finance and accounts, Google India, and currently he is State Vice President, Pragna Bharati, Telengana. Now, how he is connected with Kashmir? He has toured interior Kashmir extensively, including militancy affected areas, to rediscover its forgotten and abandoned Hindu past. That is how Mamdi Garu has done a lot of research on Kashmiri Hindus. So it's our honor to call Mr. Girdhar Mamdi, and he has a presentation to make. We'll please big round of applause for Mr. Mamdi Garu. Can you go to the first slide?
श्री महागणाधिपतये नमः।
Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Sabhaye Namaha. Distinguished members of the Kashmiri Hindu community and other Sanatanis who are all present here, my humble pranamams to all of you. Friends, since morning we have been hearing the Kashmiri Hindu tragedy, the challenges, potential solutions from several angles. What I'm going to do right now is present it as a yatri, not as a tourist. Yes, a lot of tourists do visit Kashmir, but I visit Kashmir as a yatri because that's the holy land for all of us and that's the fountainhead of revival of Sanatana Dharma in this country. When Adi Shankara had undertaken the task of reviving Sanatana Dharma in this country, the whole country was engulfed in Buddhism and Buddhist schools of thought, and the only place where you could get the ancient literature to revive it was in Sharada Peeth in Kashmir and in the living memories of the people there. So that is how people, that is how Adi Shankara went to Kashmir, brought several of the ancient scriptures and revived the Sanatana Dharma in this country. So today, if this country is practicing Sanatana Dharma, that credit should go wholly to Kashmir. Of course, I'm not going to, I'm no expert in Kashmir, as all of you live there, come from that place, and you know your land better than anybody else. But I'm going to present it as an outsider, as a non-Kashmiri Pandit who has been there, who has seen it at close quarters. I shall present it from my lens to the extent that I understood, that I walked through, and with a few of my thoughts, which I think, as a community, you could take it forward. As you all know, there was this Sati Sar in between two mountains, and we all know the story. Rainaji had explained, and the video also, the quick short video that showed the history of Kashmir also mentioned about it. As the Sati Sar left, was drained out through Baramulla, the land of Kashyapamani, the land of Kashmir was formed. And as we all, as he rightly said, for more than 5,000 years, this is the only land which has not changed its name. Every other part of Akhanda Bharat has changed its name except Kashmir. And so this is where it is. As even the satellite shows the valley of Kashmir in the midst of mountain ranges. And you can see streaks of mountain ranges across the Kashmir valley into Ladakh, into the Nepali area and the rest of the Tibetan area. It resembles, and then there are hundreds of rivers which stem from Kashmir, from the Himalayan ranges, from in and around Kashmir. It resembles as if it is a Jata Juta from the river Ganga is flowing through the locks of Bhagavan Shiva. Thousands of rivers flowing from his locks. That's how Kashmir looks like to me. And you see, there is a famous Shivatandava Stotra. I'm sure a lot of you know it. In that, there is one which says, Jata Bhujanga Pingala Spurat Fana Mani Prabha, which literally says that there are serpents which are dancing in the locks of Bhagavan Shiva. We don't have lords, by the way. It's not Lord Shiva, it's Bhagavan Shiva. So it's like the locks of holy saints that we see. You see, in Kashmir, you have so many nags. You have Anant Nag, you have Veri Nag, Bachar Nag, so many nags. It is, all these nags are the fountain or the rivers that flow through the locks of Bhagavan. So it is so apt to describe this, probably actually describes Kashmir in my view. As you see from Kailash, the entire river flow goes via the Kashmir and the regions of abetting that place. I'm not going to go into the history. The biggest kingdom that ruled this country, one of the biggest kingdoms, was the Karnataka dynasty.
which was the peaks of it was during Lalitaditya Muktipida's time, which extended from Caspian Sea to the Bay of Bengal, which is wholesomely forgotten in the living memory of all Bharatiyas in this country. We all know Akbar, Aurangzeb, Shah Jahan, Jahangir, but we simply do not know about Lalitaditya Muktapida. His capital in Parihaspura outside of Srinagar is still there. This is something which has to be taught in every textbook of this country. So, Raja Hari Singh, when he had the kingdom in his hand, I'm just showing you a map of what he owned or what he ruled over, Raja Hari Singh. This includes a region called Chitral. You see, Chitral was a subordinate kingdom of Raja Hari Singh. However, all our maps conveniently ignore Chitral because we have not even staked a claim on Chitral. The hat I'm wearing is from Chitral. So this is from the United Kashmir. So it belongs to us and nobody can monopolize this. So of course we all know the map as it existed when he gave it to us, and we know how much we lost and what part is still with us. Post Article 370 amendment, we know that Gilgit-Baltistan and Ladakh have been made into one union territory, and the rest of it is Jammu and Kashmir Union Territory. Just to give a perspective of it. But then let's go back to see who are the great Sanatanis. There are hundreds of them, but just to pick a few of them. Abhinav Gupta, from 950 Common Era to 1016 Common Era. Of course, he was a philosopher, musician, poet, dramatist, proponent of Kashmiri Shaivism, whatnot. He was an absolute all-rounder. Some of the books that he wrote are Tantra Loka, Tantra Sara, and then Abhinava Bharati, which is a treatise on Natya Shastra, Bhairava Sthava, Bodha Panchadashika. So many books that he has written, which are fountainhead of Saivism. The Saivism actually flourished in Telangana centuries later, after the Kakatiya kingdom took over here. The Saivism in either Karnataka or Telangana stems from the Saivism of Kashmir. It was from Kashmir that the Saivism got imported here, and from here it flourished further on. And of course we know the great grammarian Panini, Utpaladeva, and then Lalleshwari and Nandarishi. Of course, you see the culture which had vibrant, eras much before the Islamic invasion, which produced some of the finest works of literature, science, philosophy, and what have you. And most of them, of course, you're all Kashmiri Pandits here, Kashmiri Hindus here, but for the non-Hindus, non-Kashmiris, you see the very peculiar way the Kashmiri women, pierce their ears. It's not like what we do it here. So the Kashmiri culture has its own unique features. And of course the Sharada Lipi, which is a sad reflection that today it is completely gone, and the Kashmiri language is being written in Urdu script, which is an absolute shame. Then how well do we know about Kashmir other than Amarnath Ji? So this is again for an audience which is not a Kashmiri audience, but then it's probably good for us to see a few of them and then recollect our memories. So in Srinagar, largely there are many temples, but then three of them are very important. Shankaracharya Mandir, Pandritan Mandir, which is called Pani Mandir, it is in BB Cant, which is Badami Bagh Cantonment. And then of course Chakreshwari Shaktipeeth on Hariparvat. We all know that the Pandritan Mandir was, it's credited that Pandavas had built this Mandir. Unfortunately, none of us can go and see that because it is in the highly protected Badami Bagh Cantonment. But I urge all of you to seek, security clearances and go see this Mandir, because just behind this Mandir is a memorial which was dedicated by Modi ji in 2016, I think, to the fallen heroes of this land. You see those black plaques everywhere, black granite stones. All the black granite stones, on them are etched the names of every single soldier who has fallen since 1947 till date. They are all etched in gold. That itself is very emotional. The more emotional part of it is, you see in the bottom right part of it, there are 3 or 4 black granite stones which are empty. Nothing is written on that. What does that tell us? It tells us that we are willing to lose more of our children, more of our soldiers, but we are not going to give up Kashmir. Whenever I present this, I get choked. So, this is an emotion which unfortunately is hidden behind the protected walls of the Badami Bagh cantonment. I wish it is thrown open and each one of us go and see that, including the Kashmiri Hindus. You should go and see that. You understand that the rest of the country is sacrificing for protection of this land and to see that this doesn't go away from us. Yes, the government might have made mistakes. Maybe the government has done many things which they are not supposed to do and they are not doing what they are supposed to do. But the sacrifice is real and it's in our face. Then of course, the many other temples in mandirs in Srinagar itself, the most famous being Jeshta Devi Mandir, which is just behind the governor's residence. Vachar Nag or Vichar Nag, that was the place where a lot of Shaiva Granthas were written, and that is a place where the annual Panchang used to be written. This is unfortunately waterlogged and completely abandoned now. Durganag Mandir, this is next to the UN office in Srinagar. That is the only place where you have Krishna Dhaba, the vegetarian restaurant in Srinagar. And Panchmukhi Hanuman Mandir in Amira Kadal. Then Bhadrakali Shah Hamdan Masjid. You see the Sindoor here behind the walls of Shah Hamdan Masjid, because this was originally a Bhadrakali Mandir that has been occupied by Shah Hamdan and converted into a mazar or masjid or whatever. So the Pandits did not want to lose memory of it. So behind the wall they have put the Sindoor, and this is a photograph which I have taken myself. But sadly now you cannot access this. Earlier we could go to this place from the masjid, but now they have barricaded it. So if you have to go from a very far off distance, almost half a kilometer away. You have to walk on the banks to go to that place. But till their generation, Rainaji's generation and elder generation, they have retained the memory that this belonged to us. Unfortunately, the next generation has no chance. So let's look at a few temples from South Kashmir. Of course, everybody knows about Amarnath. Verinag, this is the fountainhead of Jhelum River, which is essentially Vitasta. And then there is Pahalgam, there is Martan Surya Mandir. And then look at the Bij Vihara Mandir. There are 12 Shivlings on a single pedestal. This is the most unique Shivling anywhere in the country. There are 11 Shivlings on a single pedestal. That makes it a 12 as a whole. And you see each of the Shivling has two shades to it. Shiva and Shakti combined in each of the Shivling. 11 Shivlings are there in this Bij Vihara Mandir, which is essentially Vijay Vihara. Then of course we all know about Martand Surya Mandir, which was destroyed by Sikandar Buchkin. Then Anantnag, the very name suggests Anantnag. There are so many nags or the springs that were there in that. And then there's Kokarnag. Kokarnag is actually Bhringi Tirtha. Bhringi and Shringi are two Pramadaganas of Bhagavan Shiva. So Bhringi Tirth is a very famous Tirth there. Of course, there is no mandir there, but for us, the water itself is very holy for us. And then you have Bumza Cave, and then there is this Bala Tripura Sundari Mandir in Kulgam, which was again destroyed by the terrorists, and then it's being now reconstructed and restored back. Then of course, there are three Kheer Bhavani Mata Mandirs, as we all know. In south, we have in Mansgam, and then as we go by, we look at the others. Then there is Khajiwada, which was called as Chota Amarnath, from where the Chadi Mubarak used to go in good olden days. Now, of course, it goes from Jammu. Then there is Katyayani Mandir in Bombay. This Shila of Mata survived the attack in 1992, when this whole temple was bulldozed into the river next behind it. After more than 10 years, when the Pandits went back and tried to retrieve that, All the murtis were destroyed, but this Shila survived. So now the temple has been reconstructed and the pujas are going on here. Of course, the most famous Kausarnag Yatra is also something which non-Pandits have no clue about. Then there are temples which have been abandoned and there is nobody there. One is Akingam in near Kokarnag, Sagam, and then Kapal Mochan, Shopian. This is not even protected by any armed forces. There are no CRPF, there is nobody there. Razdan couple are actually taking care of this particular place. It's a very lovely place, and the Shivling is, it's very unique, as if it is having Rudraksh on it, and it is left open to the sky, and it is a sight to behold during Chilai Kalan when the snow falls on Bhagavan Shiva. It's an amazing Shivling which every Bharatiya should go and visit. You have all seen the movie Kashmir Files. Raina ji mentioned it in his speech as well. I'm sure all of you remember the last scene in that particular thing where the 24 Kashmiri Pandits were massacred in cold blood. And that, you all know, is Nadi Marg. And there is a scene in that movie where the protagonist, the grandson, he actually picks up a shivling and puts it on top of a pedestal. Friends, I had the great honor of doing that in Nadi Marg. You see, this temple is completely destroyed, burnt. You can see the remnants of burnt everything. So the shivling was thrown around. So both of us picked it up, put it back, and we did Rudrabhishek there. Then let's quickly look at some temples of North Kashmir. We all know about Shira Bhavani. I'm sure you all know that this is a unique thing in Kheer Bhavani Mata Mandir Tullamulla, where the Indian map can be very clearly seen between the trees there. This photograph I had taken during spring season, and the next photograph I took in Chilai Kalan. And in both, you can't miss the map. Then, of course, there is this Prayagraj, which is even now called Narayan Bagh. Though people would prefer to call it Shadipura. This is the place where you have Jhelum and Sindh River Sangam. This great holy place has been mentioned even in Nilmak Puran. It is that ancient. Post 75 years, Pandits undertook a big Kumbh Mela there. Unfortunately, that was the year when Burhan Wani was killed, and then post that again it has tapered down. This year again they did a little bit, but not to the extent that it was done during that time. Then of course you have Sumbal. Then you have Baramulla Ekmukhi Shivling. You see, it's again a very unique Shivling where the Shiva's face jets out of the Shivling. And you have the Shelputri Mata Mandir in Baramulla. It's the only mandir in the whole country of Shelputri. Unfortunately, the back end part of it had crashed into the Jhelum river or Vitasta river. Government has now allocated funds for revival of this mandir. And then we all know this huge Shivling in Baramulla. And the Datta Mandir in Buniari. This is on the way to Uri. It's a very unique mandir, which is like a green shed. It's like a jade stone. Very, very unique mandir. Very close to the line of control. Then there is Bhadragali Mandir, where Mata's Murti, this is in Handwara, where the Mata's Murti was blasted by gelatin sticks by the Islamic jihadists. But then our Rashtriya Rifles have revived it. Now Mata's Mandir is very much there. But you see there is a burnt tree here. This is inside, just behind Mata's Murti is that burnt tree. Because of the detonation that got burnt, all the leaves got burnt. So they wanted to cut this tree away. When they started cutting it, red blood color kind of a sap started coming out of it. And so they realized that this is a living Shakti Mata in it, and so they left it open. So you see, they've they put a red cloth around it, and the tree it stands even today. So is the case with Chitragupta Mandir in Tregam near Kupwara. Unfortunately, you see there is a masjid here, which was the original Shiv Mandir, There's a small mandir next to it, but they're extending the masjid's platform into the tank in front of the mandir. This is an illegal occupation. They're purposefully occupying more and more territory unchallenged because there are hardly any Pandits left there. So this is the tragedy there. Then of course we all know Ravindra Pandita ji, Save Sharda movement, where he has built this Sharda Mandir in Titwal, overlooking the Pakistani flags. This is Mata's flag and there are Pakistani flags here. So this itself is a very big achievement for Kashmiri Pandits. So we should all applaud Ravindra Pandita ji for what he did. It's like just in your face of the Pakistanis. So that itself is a very, very powerful message that we have sent. Then the second Kheer Bhavani that we are talking about, the third Kheer Bhavani we are talking about is in Tikkar, Kheer Bhavani Mata Mandir. And of course the famous Abhinav Gupta cave. Then towards Ladakh side, if you go, in Kangan area, you have this Naranag Shiv Mandir, which is spread over, God knows, maybe 20-30 acres of land, and which is at least, if not more, maybe 1100 to 1200 years old. Massive structures that are there. You can see the civilization when Rishis, Munis used to come and etch their shivlings here and go. And this is the base camp for people to travel on yatra to Harmukh Parvat and Gangbal. Gangbal and Nandikol are two lakes like very similar to what you see in Tibet. You have Manasorovar and Rakas lake. This is very similar to that. Like you have Kailash Parvat there, you have Harmukh Parvat there. If I did not say that this is Harmukh, probably you will mistake this for Kailash itself. So it is that holy. Every year the Kashmiri Pandits go etch their symbols of Om, Trishul, Swastik and everything, and then the Mlechas come and write their names here. So this has been a battle going on every year. I hope and wish that not just Kashmiri Pandits, but every Sanatani, every Hindu of this country again visits this place once in his lifetime. To the extent I know, probably I am the only non-Kashmiri Pandit who has visited that till now. I wish more and more join there. Then they offer Shraddh, Pindadan to their forefathers. After the Shraddh ceremony is over, they offer Shraddh to every soldier who has sacrificed for the cause of Kashmir. There is a unique stone which is lying in the middle of a river which resembles Ganesh, you see. Sindoor has been put on it. Ganesh, natural formation of Ganesh in a place called Ganivan. This is again near Kangan. This needs to be revived. This needs to be, it should be part of our circuit. Last but not the least, Gurez Valley, which is bordering, the line of control. Gurez has a unique culture, language of its own. They don't speak Kashmiri. They speak, Shina language. But then, there is a shivling there in one of the caves there. It's not even known to us, but it's there in Gurez. I had an opportunity to look at it. And from this spot, this is the line of control. The mountain behind is in Pakistani control. From this spot down south, 40 kilometers is Sharda Peeth in Pakistani control. So you can offer your prayers to Mata Sharda here, and you can pick up the Tirth in Titwal, which is downstream to Sharda Mata. These are the two places that every Sanatani should also visit. Now, what has happened to this paradise and what is the road ahead for us? A few thoughts. I'll just spark a few thoughts here. We have to restore, at least to start with, the entire state of Jammu and Kashmir as it existed at the time of accession. We should have no illusions that we need this back, which is of course the resolution passed by the Indian Parliament as well. And then we have to restore our Sharda Peeth to its pristine glory. We need Sharda Peeth back. There is no way that this can be in the hands of jihadis. But there is this thing which I don't know. Ravindra Pandita ji claims this, but this is something which you have to see that. See, I don't know how many of you have gone to Sringeri. In Sringeri, the main mandir of Vidyaranya Tirtha, who established the Vijayanagar Empire, his samadhi is there. This is a samadhi. Just outside his samadhi, there is this Sharada Mata's murti there. They don't do any puja. Every day they decorate it and keep it back. It is believed that this is a murti from Sharada Peeth in Kashmir, which Adi Shankaracharya brought along with him to Sringeri. Probably this is waiting for the restoration of Sharada Peeth back in Akhand Bharat so that this can be reinstalled. And a few thoughts. Of course, we all know that this has to be done. A full rehabilitation of Kashmiri Hindus with safety and peace. These two are the operating words. It has to be there. It has to be done keeping in view their safety and as well as ensure their peace. Then you see there has to be justice for the genocide and exodus, including Truth and Reconciliation Committee. Problem is, we have seen how Supreme Court has thrown it out. When Kashmiri Pandits approached for justice, the case was thrown out. So if the case is thrown out by the Supreme Court, what is stopping the governments from taking action? Governments can definitely go ahead, file cases and then do investigation. When Bitta Karathe and Yasin Malik are openly admitting what they did on camera, what's stopping the government from taking action? The problem is ignoring the past is dangerous. As George Santayana said, those who ignore history are condemned to repeat it. So the first thing that the government has to do is to give justice to the victims of genocide. Then political representation has to be there for Kashmiri Hindus, both in the Jammu Kashmir Assembly as well as in Rajya Sabha. I can't understand the logic of why there are two nominated posts for Anglo-Indians. Of course, it has lapsed now. But then, where are the Anglo-Indians? They are Indians. Where's the question of giving a separate representation for them? Kashmiri Pandits or Kashmiri Hindus cannot elect a single councillor in this country. Does it mean that they have no right to be represented? Does it mean that their community has to have a natural death? Is it not bent upon the government of Bharat to give representation to them and hear what they want? So this is a demand that we all should make, and unanimously the rest of the country should stand by, that Kashmiri Hindus should have representation in the parliament. And then the restoration of the temples, ashrams and goshalas. Temple is not just something where you go there as a tourist spot. It is a living, thriving spiritual center. And that can survive only when the ashrams, the people who feed on it, then the goshalas, all of them survive together. So it is very important that all these things are restored back to their pristine glory. Then of course, we have this controversy of Dharmartha Trust, which is owned